Welcome to this episode of EdTech People, discussing the past, present, and future of working with technology in education.
Hello, and welcome to another fortnightly episode of EdTech People with myself, Matthew Setchell, and Jack Marshall. Jack, good to see you again.
Matthew, we're back.
We're back. We're both, I think, quite exhausted by work at the moment, but it's just that time, this term before the summer holidays is all go, isn't it, in terms of planning and organisation and getting things sorted.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture sometimes. Sometimes it's like that really technical stuff that tires you out. Sometimes it's, just having to manage a team, which can at times be challenging, can't it? No matter how good everyone is. We've had some stuff go on. Nothing bad, but like just where, okay, as a team, we've had to sort of pause and go, okay, that's not great. So how do we move forward?
I think it's always. We had failure at one of our schools, and it's one thing to obviously fix it. It's another thing that you've got to take part in to look at why it happened, and it's not necessarily blame. I mean, it's quite often my fault, I find, but I think that happens a lot when you're the guy who presses the button a lot. So I actually quoted you to somebody the other day about the failing fast.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and there was like, no, don't fail. And I was like, no, if we're going to fail, let's fail fast, learn from it, crack on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do that. So,
SpaceX just released it's a great 25-minute video on their YouTube channel. It's like a mini documentary, and it's titled something along the lines of "Tests Like How You Mean to Fly" or something like that. And it basically goes through all of their iteration, how they failed fast, why they started where they started, and because of everything they've done. That's where they are now. That's why they're landing rockets. That's why they're going to be able to land it on Mars in the future, etc. Test like you fly. That's the title of the video. And actually, again, like we said last time, bringing that same mentality in. And I've had a few conversations this week with people around that same thought process.
It's really interesting when I've been doing a lot of training last week, this week. I've done some today. Partners, NASN, National Association of Special Education Needs, went to their office over in Tamworth and trained them in accessibility tools. And it's really great audience and great to do, but I did 2 sessions, and it does take it out of you. Doing it tomorrow, I'm at Schools and Academy show all day as well, and then Friday off to do a tender. And sometimes actually standing up and talking for the whole day is just as tiring as sitting and trying to make things work, or even being in a server.
And it's quite a diverse sort of different days, actually, isn't it? In the sense of you're doing technical stuff, you're doing, end user front, training, delivery, then you're sitting around, let's say, a board table, or whatever that looks like. It's sometimes it can be quite challenging to flick that switch or that toggle, to all these different, and that's probably 3 very different sets of people you're working with. In one example, you're working with some clients training wise, in another example, executive teams or leaders. Another example might just be your boys in your team, and who you can say what you say to, have a good time with. But even switching how you are sometimes with those different groups of people is a challenge. Now, what's worse is when you have to do that across one day several times, as opposed to, different days. But
but it's also why I like it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why part of the reason we do it, isn't it? I think you've got a few talking points, haven't you, Matt?
I have. So we are going to cover today cloud services and what happens when they go down. So it's quite a timely discussion. We're seeing more and more as systems, HR, MIS, filtering, if that's done externally, CPOMs, My Concern, all these different platforms that you might use in your schools. What do you do when they go down? And obviously, how does that look? A bit of comparison to how it used to be, and how, from a technical point of view, we go around fixing that. Then we're also going to look at finances in multi-academies trusts. So there was an article out around Schools Week today, that was, it's not today, it's been there for a while, and it was talking about how many trusts are in financial trouble. So it's like it's a number of trusts that are over £1 million in the red. Has almost doubled it in a year, and with warning saying it's tougher than ever to keep pace with the increased cost. What does that look like? What does it mean? IT spending in particular, an impact on that, and also wider impact on where IT can make a few savings. And then we're also going to talk refurb suppliers, which is a bit of a link on from that, really. Is that a place where you can save money? And what does that look like? So, that's today's kind of menu of what we're talking about. So should we dive right in with cloud services, Jack?
Yeah, I think I'll start on that if that's all right. So, for us, so like most people probably aware now, because I bang on about it for context, cloud first organization, pretty much full cloud, other than Paxton, because Paxton, right? So with that caveat out the way, when a cloud service goes down, what do? We raise a major incident in Halo, send comms to people if comms will still send, if Halo, depending on what cloud service is down, obviously. Then I'm probably going to go get coffee and wait for it to come back up. And that's probably not the answer that people want, and people don't understand. Why is he walking out the gate to get coffee with his team? It's like, unfortunately, I can't remember who it was. Was it you or was it someone else? It's like, I can't phone Jeff Bezos and tell him to fix AWS. I can't remember. I was speaking to someone, I can't remember who said it. Certainly wasn't me, so I don't want to claim that line, but it's like, literally, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I understand it's a problem, and that's part of the challenge, isn't it? When you're full cloud, you've got infrastructure that you can't, physically go and reboot, or, as a metaphor, like when you can't do that, there's not a lot you can do. And I think that then makes people panic, when the reality is actually, it's like Cloudflare goes down, wipes out like 90% of educational platforms, because I think you've probably seen it on LinkedIn, or those almost memes where it's like a stack of blocks, and it's like this one tiny little like finger width block at the bottom, and that's Cloudflare, and that's holding up the entire internet. And I think when you've got organizations like that, it's going to be DNS, let's be honest. And like, if they're going to fix it, right? Like, it's out of our hands. They're going to fix it. They've got a lot of really good people who are paid a lot of really good money. It's not going to be down for long. The caveat of that is we probably see with some more education specific platforms where, yes, they might rely on third party services like Cloudflare, AWS, Azure, etc. When it's not an issue with that, but it's actually like a local issue with that specific platform, that's when downtime can be longer, and then provides bigger problems. But yeah, for me, it's just about comms, and from there, if there's stuff we can do, we can do it. But all of our schools are prepared, everyone can continue to teach. I guess the key is, can we do it in a safe way? Yes, we can. We're confident in that. We've got systems in place for that. If, for example, you can't access contact information, are we in the trouble? Well, yes, we would be if we didn't have, as part of a business continuity plans, disaster recovery, if that was needed, like if we didn't have plans in place to address that. Do we have hard copies locked away in secure locations of up-to-date contact information, etc.? One small example. I've waffled on a bit there. So, Matt, what are your thoughts?
I agree. It's there's little you can do these days, and it's very frustrating at times. I mean, we've gone from when I got my first network manager's gig and put in a whole new network. The servers failed. I couldn't get them to work again, but at least I was sat in front of the server, trying to get it to work, and I was in control of it somewhat. And that ability to control the situation is something that It gives you a bit of hope because you can see, or you can know that you're making progress. You can make decisions based on where that progress is. So
Yeah.
I think it goes without saying, in terms of like what you said, communication is really, really important. So like where that is, you can get, you don't just hide in a server room. You get your head out and you say, right, this isn't going to be fixed for a day. And I tend to find schools where you're upfront with them and give them that they can plan around it. They've got the resourcefulness to,
Mhm.
plan around that and make it work. It's if you keep on promising and not delivering. And I think that's interesting because when it comes to cloud, you lose that ability to give somebody an answer. You lose
Mm.
that ability to
Mm.
turn around and say, well, we're 90% there now. We've just got to do this last 10%, or,
Absolutely.
this is the next plan of things. You're in the dark. You're, as much as anybody else, you can read the status page and tell them.
It's
And
it's like you've just said, comms is everything, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
if you communicate, example, Tuesday, yesterday, obviously first day back, everything was working fine at a school I was working from. Lease line goes down. Now, as per DfE standards, we have backup connections that are resilient, should automatically fail over, etc., etc. You can do all the config and testing in the world. For whatever reason, this didn't fail over as within the 10 seconds that it would normally do. Um, we just went and spoke to the head, like, look, this problem, this is where we're at. Um, you know, we should be back up within the next half an hour, worst case scenario. She's like, yeah, sound, like, thanks for letting. So literally one of my favorite head teachers, like, literally, yeah, no problem. Biggest school in the trust, no problem. It's like, we know what we can do. Like, it's not a problem. We can continue to teach, we continue to safeguard, etc. We can hotspot our phones and access Arbor, worst case scenario, for if we need to. Like,
yeah.
everything's cool. We've got hotspots if needed, and so on and so on. And yeah, like literally 2 minutes later, we walked down to where we needed to the comms room, repatch something, and away, the classic, that's just, it's worked again, which is obviously a new problem. We've now got to understand the why
Yeah,
around,
why
but
it happened. Yeah.
it's like letting someone know and in the loop. And it was quite funny because one of the colleagues was on the radio, like, yeah, I actually think it could be all day, as I was walking past, and I was like, right, let's not tell everyone it's IT have said that, because IT haven't said that.
Yeah,
At
I think
all.
sometimes people are just wishful for a day off, and actually,
Yeah.
if the IT is not working, nobody truly minds.
Yeah,
and it,
agreed.
if they're honest about it, a day off getting badgered by emails and stuff. But I think it's, I've been battling some filtering issues all day today, and other issues that, like you say, just come out there, and you're relying on a third party more than ever before. And some people use that as a reason, not to move into the cloud. That loss of agency over being able to fix it and be able to understand the systems you've got. It's linked to when we've talked in the past about things like AI. If you're building systems on AI, do you know how they're built in order to fix them, or are you going to have to be waiting until you hit the answer with AI when you've given it the right information? I think it's definitely a different world, but I do think there's a legitimate conversation to have around, is there a need for, well, it's coming back, isn't it? More and more people are looking at data residency and data sovereignty, and having their own cloud that they then manage, rather than trusting it to your Microsofts, Googles, other providers of the world. Personally, there's no way that a primary or even a secondary school can afford the infrastructure that Microsoft or Google have got and done that. But I do think an interesting point is, and I've seen this quite a few when I'm working with people in partnerships now, teams that you think are huge aren't. It was an interesting on the EduGeek site, where there was a downtime earlier on this week. And, it's just interesting. Do people realize how big these development teams are for these pieces of software, that are affected by it, and then there's also, of course, costs are rising. So companies are cutting their staffing on there, but also the geolocation of those people. So I was talking with Smoothwall earlier on, and their guys are in Australia for this particular task. So, I'm not planning to stay up the night, but somebody's going to be talking with them to see
For sure.
what can they do in that particular situation. So I think understanding those limitations is really, really important, and that you mentioned earlier on, that continuity plan. And in there, you've got to know where your data is, who you got to talk to, what you got to do if it's gone, and how you manage that, and probably multiple failures of it. It's very unlikely these days when your internet went, that would be the phones, it would be the printers, it would be the everything that you need to make it work. It affects all of those different elements of it. Whereas back in the day, if you segregated it over different servers and stuff like that, it'd be a really bad day if everything went down. But you'd at least be able to put in some stop gaps and stuff. Now, if Microsoft's down, what are you going to do? It's just down.
Go get a coffee in it.
Yeah, you won't be able to pay for it because all their stuff will be on Azure and everything like that.
I was going to say, yeah. And you can't SSO into all these platforms that we use SSO. So, 365,
exactly.
Single point of failure. Again, we've got, in that example, we've got admin local accounts in a lot of these platforms anyway. So whilst we use SSO, we've done the work to make sure that we can still get into these platforms if needed. But yeah, so I think that's a really good conversation, and again, we could probably unpick it for hours on. I think maybe next time one of the points we'll talk about is that on-prem versus cloud agency. Why some people just don't want to go to the cloud because we lose the control, the redundancy, this, that, and I think that would be interesting to definitely do a full episode on that. But yeah,
it won't take me long to turn and say they're wrong, but they're wrong.
I agree. Maybe we need to get someone else on as well to
maybe we need somebody else to counter argue. But no, I can see where people are coming from, but you got to move with the times, and you got to move to the right place. So, well, talking about moving with the times, we look at finances in multi-academies. So this article that's come out is it's very interesting. So this is more Tale of Two Trusts, more academy chains, £1 million in the red, whilst others improve. So this is on Schools Week. And it's one of the things that's, I don't know if you heard about this, but the Arthur Terry Learning Partnership.
So I was just thinking, we've got a really good conversation topic there. And we haven't talked about this before, have we, Matt? But literally ATL is local to both of us.
Is it?
Sutton Coldfield, isn't it? Sutton Coldfield.
Oh, is it? All right, okay, yep, that is local.
More local to me, but as a Sutton boy. But yeah.
So it's 20 schools, 8.4 million in debt.
And that's gone up quite significantly from what I understand in the last X amount of time as well.
20
lots of
schools.
Lots of reasons for it. We probably will never really know the truth and the full understanding of it all. But I think a big thing was around this iPad lease. 11,000 iPads, was it? Something like that?
Yeah, so it says the Arthur Terry is also consulting on the next phase of its controversial use of iPads, having brought 5,500 devices and leased 5,500 more. That's odd to lease half of it and buy the other half.
It sounds like they had a plan, which then didn't plan.
Yeah. Or they did, and they didn't understand what they were doing in terms of the finances of it, which created an ongoing annual commitment of over £1 million. And then they, so £1 million a year deficit for your kids to have iPads. Wow. I mean, there's another trust further down here. It talks about signing, IT leases when they didn't have the budget. And, these kind of things are scary, really. I mean, there is some good news. So it was only 3.9% of all academy chains posted a deficit last year. It's down slightly by 4% on the previous year. So that's good. But I
think what we're seeing there is, I think trusts are getting a lot leaner with everything. I think we're getting a lot more stronger people in post. We're seeing a lot more roles get advertised, at that CFO level, director of finance, etc. And I think I've got no data to back this up, but just from what I'm seeing, when I'm seeing these people have started a new role, and the classic LinkedIn is you've got a lot more people who have actually done some stuff in places with good experience going into these roles now. And I think the sector's evolved enough over the last sort of decade where actually CFOs and directors of finance and heads of finance, they've done roles in one trust, and a lot more people have moved between trusts, and a lot of the bigger trusts, a lot of those people move around the similar size organizations. So people now have got a lot more experience. It's not as uncommon now. Whether that, gag pooling, for example, that's more not as common as, but it's more common than it was 5-6 years ago. So I think you've got a lot more people with a lot more experience in the sector, which operating at this scale, whereas before it was maybe people who have been business managers, been promoted into CFO, like we see head teacher promoted to CEO or whatnot. And I think
technician
we're
to
lucky
network
now,
manager,
technician to network manager, or like network manager to director of IT.
Different jobs,
different jobs
skill sets
completely, 100%.
needed for that. And I think, I talked about that in that not controversial blog post the other week. What's interesting as well is that out of the 83 that are in deficit last year of multi-academies, 56 of them, so that's 67%, were single academy trusts.
Interesting.
And only 10 trusts ran more than 9 schools. So that quite clearly shows that these single school academy trusts are the ones that are suffering. And the bigger the trust, the bigger the impact. And I think you can see that with, as you say, the central teams, particularly on the IT teams. If you look at yours in particular for the amount of schools versus the amount of people that you got, I bet if you put, a line by line, comparing to when whatever setup they had before, you'd be able to show a saving on people, a saving on systems, and bringing that together and being able to reuse
100%.
those skills.
So from a financial point of view, we're like hundreds of thousands of pounds in savings over the last 5 years by doing what we've done from digital point, going full cloud, etc. At the moment we have 14 schools and we have 3 people running around doing the daily, help desk stuff, addressing those issues really effectively. That should be 4 people, but it isn't at the moment. And then we've got a few of us who are then obviously doing more, okay, we'll go where we need to be, but actually we're managing what we need to manage, and innovating, etc. So I think it shows that with the right team, the right structure, you don't need 100 people to do that, the jobs, but you can operate lean if you've done the work to enable you to operate lean. You've probably got some schools that have got 4 IT people in one secondary school, arguably some of the bigger secondary schools potentially. But again, if you have the right systems and hardware in place, do you need that many people? It's relative to the systems and the technology you've got in place.
It relates back to what we were talking about at the start, the difference between the cloud and the non-cloud. If you're, or even that hybrid hell where you're trying to run both, if you are in a position where you're forcing people to run legacy software, legacy equipment, and legacy systems, devices, then that's going to cost you more to staff and manage than being cloud first and being without it. And if you're stuck between the two because you can't decide where you're going, it's even worse. And I think it's interesting where the MSPs fall into that from our point of view. I mean, I've led a central team across a large multi-academy trust myself, and obviously delivered outsourced IT support to others, and did it for schools, helping schools, and through my current role, we are an MSP. That is our our bread and butter. But those same savings that you're able to say about from a central team is what an MSP can deliver as well, because it's a very similar model, just on a larger scale, often, across multiple organizations, of centralizing the skills, keeping the systems up to date and doing it. So I think there's an alignment between both models, whether you outsource that part of it or not, it doesn't really matter. And, from there, you get the same outcomes of being able to move forward and deliver that and have significant savings on where you would have been previously. And I think it's really important we look back to where we were previously to look at the savings that we've achieved. This isn't whilst there's always costs with technology, the costs aren't the same and the impact isn't the same. And I think you don't have to look too far in the past to see where there was very little impact to now where there is huge impact. You can take your device anywhere, access everything securely. You've got the growth of these cloud platforms and AI that are all, your Arbors, your Bromcoms, they are all so much more complex and useful than perhaps
Yeah.
what they used to be
Yeah.
for people. And that comes from, moving forward and adopting that different way of doing things. And I think whilst it's worrying to see the financial state for some of them, that obviously is, quite scary. It's interesting that the two that it mentions here, which got an IT slant, is around hardware. And I think that's a bit quite interesting, isn't it? Because hardware wise, we all know that that's a constant cost.
Yeah.
Whether that's devices, infrastructure, none of that has gone away other than like the physical servers type thing. And so that cost will remain, but is one-to-one devices in particular, is that affordable? And I would, as much as I'd like it to be, and it's something that we've got to get to, right now, I don't think it is. You can, with Chromebooks, there's huge opportunities. That's where I've seen it work with Chromebooks, I'll be honest. With Microsoft Kit, when you're looking at double the cost of a Chromebook per person, or an iPad, and we know the feeling on iPads, and I know you and I are both Mac fanboys, but we both know iPads in education are a bad idea and expensive and can't be monitored and secured and all that malarkey. So, like, I don't know who advised them on that one, but it's probably Apple.
Yeah, and that's if someone's managed to get a nice day at it's Battersby in London there, haven't they? Where Apple are based. But yeah, I think, Chromebooks, so we're doing that at the moment. We're probably going to do that for I've said before, we're just finalising our testing on that, and we'll probably buy more or whatever that looks like. Not one-to-one, obviously. I've only ever been involved in one conversation around one-to-one devices, so I don't have enough knowledge around it to give an informed opinion, other than the fact that at the time I was like, well, let's maybe not like run before we're swimming. Does that make sense? I think you understand what I'm trying to say. It's run before you walk, but I was trying to emphasize we're not even walking yet. So, I think I'd love to see one-to-one work really well. And I'm sure there's people that have done it really well, but is that relative to the setting as well, where the schools are? I don't know if data exists on that or not.
Well, I can give anecdotal evidence. So, there's many schools I've worked in, I've deployed some of those schemes myself, both at Coursera and before where I previously worked. And I work at schools now that I've got it. I tell you where one-to-one works really well is in specialist schools, where there's a unique need for it all. And actually, they need to be mobile.
Well, my trustee, they've got one-to-one devices, but that is a inclusion-based trust with a very specific, where we meet several very specific needs. It's not mainstream, so it works better there.
There's a secondary school I work with that has gone one-to-one Chromebook, and they are stopping it from next year and going back to trolleys. One of the big things that people miss about it is that always on connections means always on risks, both from a safeguarding and a cybersecurity point of view. And, you're accountable and responsible for that. And although the tools are absolutely there to achieve it, it's not actually the technology that will be an issue with it. It will be the people who are doing the human element of that. Are they available 24/7 for safeguarding calls and stuff like that?
Agreed.
Which brings us on nicely, really. We're talking about devices and costs of all devices around refurb suppliers. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. My thoughts are very ingrained, so I would love it to hear your thoughts on it and see whether I'm doing my
never
usual
really
rubbish.
bought. Yeah, so we've never really bought them, kind of by design. I think we bought a few years ago, like just a batch, because it was, for some reason, we were getting a lot of staff devices getting destroyed that were relatively new. And it's like, well, we're not going to go and spend another £500-600 per device if they're just getting, we were going through a lot of devices at a rate that made no sense. So we bought some, they're the ThinkPads, the classic black ThinkPad, bit of a beast, and none of them are broken. They still work really well. But other than that, we've not bought them, kind of by design, because we're fortunate enough that, we're now in. I was talking about it at an event yesterday. We're now in our second refresh cycle. So you've got years 1, 2, 3, and then now we started again. So we're finishing year 2 now of that. So year 5 total, I guess. So if you had a new device 4 years ago, essentially you've got a new device now. Slash we're rolling out another 120 at the moment, replacing ones from only 3 or 4 years ago. So for us to then replace those devices with refurb devices that are probably similar age to the ones that they've already got doesn't make sense. I hope that makes sense what I've just vocalized
No,
there.
it really does, because people need to realize that the devices are like secondhand lease cars. They've been used for 3 years on a lease and then given back, and they'll obviously show that age, but they're already at least 3 years old before you get them. And that's the reason I say at least, as you know, is that they could have been released a couple of years before they were sold.
Yeah.
So, you
Absolutely.
could be looking at 5 to 7 years old before you even get there. Then you put them in a classroom, you don't replace them for another 3 or 4 years. And to be honest with you, schools that use refurbed equipment are more likely to elongate their refresh periods and not have that in there. I just think with the advent of leasing for schools over this, proper operational leases, it doesn't make financial sense to buy refurbed equipment.
I think sometimes it's a knowledge gap for the people involved, the schools.
Yeah.
They don't know what's possible. But then is that easy for us to say? Like, is it easy for me to say based on the fact that I've always had easy budgets? So like in my last few roles, I've never really had budget issues. Like, there's always that conversation around need more money, need to do this, need that, I want to do this. But I've never been told no to the point where it's like had a detrimental impact on something we're trying to do. Is that because I know how to manage a budget well? Maybe I'm going to give myself that one. Because
but I also think sometimes
people
people who are doing it, and we touched on this earlier on, are just seeing it as these need to be replaced. What's the cheapest way to replace them? They're not looking at what am I replacing, how am I replacing it, why am I replacing it? It's not just replace a computer or a laptop with another computer or laptop. What's the user case? Who's doing it? What do they need?
Agree.
If you're looking at that from a mobile point of view, you're looking at, well, the battery life's, really affected from that on a laptop. If they're handled and used, they have a certain amount of times you can charge, recharge, open screens, that kind of thing. And I just don't think schools are the place to have some of the older technology and those used devices, and then complain when it doesn't work, because you've not given it yourself the best opportunity at the end of the day.
I guess the flip side, and again, this might be because we're not there and it's easy for us to say, is if you're in a position where you could buy 20 new laptops for staff, or you could buy all of your staff 60 refurb devices that are 3 years old of a higher spec, even though they're slightly older, and maybe even have some change left, it's like, what's the better position for if you've got really bad devices at that point? What is the right decision there? And I think for me, in that scenario, maybe I would look at it like, okay, let's buy the 60 devices this year and let's start our new device refresh plan next year, because our existing devices are just 8-9 years old. Yeah. And we need a quick win now to then be able to put a strategy in moving forward.
Yeah. No,
that's me counter arguing most of what we've just said. But that's also that strategy, right? And that's the kind of mindset we have to have. If we've got to do it, okay, fine, but let's do it now to enable where we actually want to be. And then let's make sure that if we're going to do it, it means that actually next year we're going to be in a position that we can then start this proper strategy or the next phase of the strategy. That's potentially another way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, absolutely. I think it's right, that we look at that. I mean, I've when we're supporting schools, once you've just convinced them to come on to an MSP, once you've then convinced them they've got to pay for the backups and everything like that, the prices, I think, are a lot more visible when you're looking at an MSP, because internally you sign a budget. You don't have every request necessarily coming to you. You have, it's an IT thing. As long as they're spending within the budget, they're fine. An MSP won't have a budget, for spending stuff. They need to go to you and get you to approve each purchase that they need. So it comes across a bit differently. And I think at that point, when you then come to a school and say, oh, actually, just so you know, all your devices are out of date, then they do look towards them. And don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic refurb companies and people within those who genuinely care and sort it out. I see that, and I feel that there's some ones that we always see at Bet, and they've got a good rep, and that's great. When there's a need for them, as you've just said, to get yourself out of a hole, maybe get yourself up to the level, and then immediately start a plan of trying to bring yourself forward and get on top of the problem.
100%, and it goes back to my original point. I can't replace 3-year-old devices with 3-year-old devices. Now, if that changes in the future because of budgets or whatnot, then maybe we sit here and have a different conversation because I'm in a different place. But right now, as far as I'm aware, my strategy is continuing as it has done for the last several years. Touch wood, let's not curse myself.
Yeah, if anybody who works with Jack is listening, to keep that going. But I think as well, you've got to look at the ROI on any of this equipment. What will the impact be of that equipment? And I think it's interesting when you come back to, we were talking about one-to-one earlier on as well. We all know that if you put a device in front of a student, or you make a teacher have a device that they can work on, there is numerous benefits. You've got teacher retention and flexibility. They can go home, pick their kid up at 4, spend the evening with the kids, start working at 7 or 8 in the evening if they want to, and know that they can go in the next day and be prepared. That's how they want to do it. Other people might have different ways of doing it. That's absolutely fine. But you're allowing for every eventuality. And with students, there's nothing more powerful than giving them a device these days that they can access information on, that's out there, as long as you obviously protect them from doing that. And it can, from an accessibility point of view, when I was doing the training today, you put immersive reader in the hands of every student on there, or you look at the Chromebooks that you can control with your eyes, and you can have all those additional features on it. That's the impact of it. And if you've spent well on those, you've got to realize that the hardware is just one element of the cost, and the other element is the strategic, is the delivery, is the training, is the use of them. And if you're not willing or not able to, maybe not willing, but there are some cases when people are not willing to invest in all those elements of it, then you're never going to get that success from it, and you're never going to get that ROI on it. And that, is a tale as old as time. You absolutely training, and also demystifying in terms of simplifying it, not over provisioning. So there's nothing wrong with a device that is good enough for somebody to create the lesson materials and check their emails and go on the internet on. You don't need like an Alienware laptop that can game and everything like that. You just want also like a decent device.
If you're not over-engineered, if you're full cloud, if your device is managed in Intune, like you're logging on in 10 seconds, you could have like 8 gig RAM, i5, 256 gig SSD, and you'd still be okay because most of what you're doing is going to be within Edge or Chrome, like web apps. Like
the only thing that I find for education is the extra effort that they need now to run filtering and monitoring on the device. Because obviously before that always used to be centralized, but now the device going offsite, it's run on device. That those are hefty workloads. But I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you that, you don't need top of the range gear, to do it.
So our baseline at the moment is 16 gig i5, 256 gig for staff devices. We've just bought i7 instead of i5 because for whatever reason it was cheaper to get an i7 device that was exactly the same as instead of the i5. I was like, okay, well, Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, why not?
But like in our use case, like, yeah, like we've got lean installs, we put blank images on everything, and then Intune deploys what it's meant to do. And that's that. So yeah,
and it is that device management, isn't it? I mean, the place I go in there, see, and they've just been given a device with all the gumph on it that comes with it, and then it's probably taken up 35% of the brain power before it even starts, and then you shove on filtering and monitoring, and you're at 50% usage before the device is actually used.
Well, similar experience recently. Brand new school joined us 1st of April. They've got this like metal cage with like loads of like devices in with large fans that make a lot of noise, and I tried to log on to one of them. I think they call them servers. I was trying to log into one, and I honestly, 46 minutes later, it logged in. It was literally like spinning, applying that to shut down for whatever reason. And I'm just sat there like, what's going on? Like why? And we know why, right? But like, it's been 5+ years since we've had any infrastructure that does any of that. And in a few weeks, that infrastructure won't exist anymore for that reason. But
we
just
see
goes to show
all the time when we take over a school. And what annoys me more than anything is MSPs who don't clear up after themselves. So we make a point of uninstalling whatever we put on it. Well, we do.
Like, you guys might, but the amount of I've logged onto servers before. I'm like, well, you've got this agent
still connected.
Yeah. So you've got this RMM agent from the old IT guy who left 10 years ago. This agent, they're all fighting each other. You've then got your EDR going blah, and then you've got some other XDR that's spawned out of nowhere that's probably malware, and it's just like, it hurts.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. In fact,
it's actually quicker. It's quicker to move people to the cloud than try and clean up the messes on some of these servers.
100%.
Like, I can do it in half a day. If I've got a good internet connection, give me half a day and a couple of my guys, and we're laughing. Anyway, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, other MSPs, please uninstall the crap before you leave it. Don't leave that school suffering. 50,000 backup clients, 50,000, remote control scripts and all that. And if you do, then I may well name and shame you in the future, because there's so many.
but equally, if you're like if you're an IT guy in a school, fully employed locally at that school level or that trust level, and you've been running some sort of crazy experiment on the network that you shouldn't have been doing, please turn that off and uninstall it properly, and do a good handover. It's always hard to document stuff. Like we all, I know some people who do it really well, but just take your time and let's not be crypto mining or trying to contact aliens on the school networks.
No. Handover is the sign of a good technical person or MSP. If you do a good handover, that's a good thing.
Passwords at least as a minimum.
Please. Although the other day we took on a school, and it was only a primary school, not only a primary school, but it was a small primary school, and they had nearly 250 passwords. And obviously they don't have all that access anymore.
Let's talk about passwords next time, and let's remember to talk about passwords next time. So I've got an interesting discussion to have on that, just a brain dump, and then see what your thoughts and what the answer is to that.
Sounds good. Yes, I'll hold you to that.
On that note, we're probably at time.
Yes, we are. That's
meant to be trying to keep short on because we'll be here all night.
Yes, exactly. So that brings us to the end of today. So thank you, Jack. As always, I think that was a really interesting discussion. Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment. Subscribe to us on your usual platforms. Wherever you get podcasts, you can also watch us on YouTube. And we will see you once again in another fortnight.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is made possible by our sponsors, Secure Schools. Benchmark, improve, prepare. Reduce cybersecurity risks with expert tools and services built specifically for schools and trusts. Smoothwall, who exists to help keep children safe and thriving in their digital lives by supporting and empowering them and those who care for them in school, at home, and everywhere in between. Take control of your resources. Classroom Bookings is an online room booking system for schools, colleges, charities, and more. Organize your shared resources on your own schedule so users always know what is available and when. And First Pillar. At First Pillar, we provide expert operational and business leadership support for schools, academies, and trusts. Our mission is simple: to help school leaders focus on what matters most, pupils, by ensuring every aspect of school business management runs smoothly, compliantly, and strategically. For more information on the show and our sponsors, visit www.edtechpeople.co.uk.